IVM.
Close your eyes for a moment and imagine. What would you be doing today had it not been for your day-to-day responsibilities of meeting work deadlines and making sure your family is financially secured? Would you have been a footballer, kicking the ball around on those grassy grounds? Or would you have been an artist, sitting near a window overlooking the hills as you paint away? Maybe you crave to be a photographer. But here you are, framing a picture of the life you wish you had. But this can still be a reality. करो पूरे अपने इरादे, अपनों से किए सभी वादे. SBI Life अपने लिए, अपनों के लिए. To know more about our insurance plans with wealth creation, log on to www.sbilife.co.in. IRDAI registration number 111.
Hi, I'm Utsav, a behavior researcher by training and a slow traveler by passion. Postcards from Nowhere is a travel podcast where I condense a decade of travel experiences and explore not just the where, but also the why and how to travel. My stories emerge from slow traveling the less explored parts of the world: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Armenia, Uzbekistan, and even China. At the end of each story, I give practical tips and new ideas about how to travel better. This week, we travel from the shores of Pondicherry to the Caribbean Republic of Guyana and trace the history, mythology, and stories of indentured migrants. We discover what connects West Indies cricket, Jackals, the Mariamman Temples of Tamil Nadu, and the Sheetla Devi temples of North India. In the early 2000s, a concerned government official approached Dave. Dave was an iconic musician from the Caribbean who was the lead vocalist of the band Tradewinds. Someone who had his finger on the pulse of the southern Caribbean islands. The government official said, "Guyanese pay attention to your music, man. So a song on this subject might help calm things down." The subject in question was violence. Ethnic tensions had broken out in Guyana. The reasons were as old as migration itself. A clash between a community which considers itself the sons of the soil and another community which migrated a few hundred years ago. The tensions themselves were not new. They were largely triggered by the British, who ruled over the West Indies and deliberately left the country in a mess. Dave wasn't very keen. His music did not usually address such things head on, but he was persuaded. Out of his pen came these lines: Ramotar and Joseph Henry drinking 2 rum in unity. Landing a cricket game next day, Ramotar turned to Joe and say, "We can win it in Guyana. Pick Chandrapal and pick Hooper." The first time that the West Indies win, it wasn't just Sonny Ramadeen. When we give England licks that time, it was Ramadeen and Valentine. And now in this time in this country, we have to use the same strategy. We must play Kal and Shiv. That's how we have to live. For us to win this game, Bana, Guyana must combine Hooper and Shiv Narain. This match is make or break, Bana. If you have followed cricket in the 90s, staying up insanely late to watch cable and wireless test matches, you would be familiar with the names Hooper and Chandrapal. These two, along with Brian Lara, were the famed batting trio for West Indies cricket. Dave came up with the idea of addressing the ethnic tensions through an imaginary cricket match, one which Guyana could win only by ensuring that the team included both Hooper and Chandrapal, symbols of two major ethnic groups, Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese. In 2021, a book by the title of the Cane Cutter Song was released. It is Mumbai University professor Vidya Venkatesan's translation of Raphael Confiant's French book La Panse du Chacal, or The Belly of the Jackal. Set in Tamil Nadu at the turn of the 20th century, it traces the fictional story of the Dorasamy family, who were once wealthy merchants. However, the arrival of British textiles, combined with the repercussions of the revolt of 1857, meant that things took a turn for the worse. Famine hit many parts of the country and was particularly brutal in the Madurai and Dindigul region of Tamil Nadu. The countryside saw widespread hunger and starvation, and people survived by eating boiled leaves. In a bone-chilling scene, the key protagonist, Adhiyaman Dorasamy, arrives back home, and I quote from the book. The spectacle that lay before the boy's eyes left him transfixed. A pack of wild dogs, jackals, were in the process of devouring his mother and father voraciously. The jackals had not even caught the scent of him, but his father had lost consciousness and his entrails spilled from his torn stomach. Adiyaman charged at the assailants, screaming, but against all expectations, they confronted him. One of the jackals jumped on him and lacerated his arms. Terrorized, the young boy took to his heels. One of the last things he remembered is the sound of a tibia cracking, one which belonged to his poor father. While the account is fictional, by no means was Adiyaman's story unique. Driven to desperation by the situation at home, many like him found themselves in the port cities of Pondicherry, Karikal, and Madras. Back in Guyana, Dave released the song. He saw it as one of the most subtle calypsos to have been written. A disc jockey in Antigua radio dubbed it the best calypso of the decade. I'd love to tell you that the song went on to become a sensation. However, it was declared dead on arrival. It bombed completely, and people even questioned the sanity of Dave. So what connects a 21st century song about Guyanese cricketing legends to the wretched state of affairs in Madurai and Dindigul? Indentured migration. In the late 19th century, as slavery was abolished, the first batch of Indian indentured labor arrived in British Guyana. Most of them came on 5-year contracts, post which they would be repatriated back home. Indentured migration became a steady replacement of the slaves. Between 1845 and 1917, around 150,000 laborers were shipped to Trinidad. Similarly, many found themselves in Jamaica, Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, and St. Kitts Island. A bulk of these migrants belonged to the Bhojpur region, but a significant minority came from Tamil Nadu and Andhra. In fact, the book Cane Cutter's Song is set in French-ruled Guyana and the islands of Martinique and Guadeloupe. Many migrants were deceived. They were told that they were going to America, and even the deception was done in sinisterly ingenious ways. For example, those who signed to immigrate to Suriname were misled by the recruiters, who would pronounce the country as Sriram. This would make migrants have very positive connotations about the place. They undertook long voyages by ship, living in squalid conditions with their food and water being rationed. They were already under severe distress, as this was the time when their caste restrictions had no meaning. Everyone was lumped together, and touch, food, and water-based caste practices went for a toss. But there was one thing which afflicted all these migrants equally: smallpox. The disease was extremely contagious and took a toll on many indentured migrants. The Tamil people turned to a deity they had worshipped since pre-Vedic times, Mariamman. Mari in Tamil means rain and Amma means mother. Her worship mainly focuses on bringing rains and curing diseases like cholera, smallpox, and chickenpox. But how are rain and diseases connected? Mariamman cures all so-called heat-based diseases like pox and rashes, and the rains are what brings relief from that heat. While the Tamilians had Mariamman, the Bhojpuris had Sheetla Devi, or the one who cools. Today, both Mariamman and Sheetla Devi temples abound in Tamil Nadu and North India respectively. But there is another set of Mariamman temples we need to talk about. Those which today thrive in the former plantations. And they are all definitely casteless. Mariamman temples of Guyana are also remarkable for their distinctness as not only a place of non-Brahmin deity, but also a space where casteless subjectivity is reinforced. Architecturally, the Mariamman shrines are almost an extension of the house of their multilingual and modern priests. This extends to Kali temples as well. It invariably hosts a pantheon of deities, some of which are even absent in Brahminical deity temples in Guyana or India. Christ, Mary, and Islamic images are also present among the diverse non-Brahminical deities. The priest of a Kali temple in Guyana says Muslims and Christians regularly visit the Kali shrine for healing their psychosomatic challenges in life. While the Muslim and Christian worshippers retain their own distinct religious identity, they liberally accept Kali as well to ward off their travails and to seek well-being through her blessings. He goes on to explain that Mary, Christ, and the images of Islam in the shrine are at the center and at par with Kali and other vernacular caste-free deities. It took indentured migration, slavery, and smallpox for Indians to create casteless spaces. What Dave could not achieve with his song Hooper and Chandrapal was achieved by goddess Kali and Mariamman. as history would attest, strip people of their identity and dignity, and they will come together in ways earlier thought unimaginable. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Utsav Memory on Twitter and YVTravel42 on Instagram.
Hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storytellers, Vineet talks to Chavi and Mohit, the couple behind Shitty Ideas Trending, about their creator journey. On Big Talks About Tiny Human, Meghna and Devi Shobha share strategies on how to deal with difficult behaviors of strong-willed children. On Pulyabasi, Pranay and Saurabh discuss why Indian students go abroad in large numbers for an MBBS degree. On Probation Se Promotion Tak, Abhinav tells us the benefits of self-marketing through writing for public forums. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina discusses red flags, how we can identify them, and how we can deal with them. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. It really helps us. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you're listening to. And also remember, you can check us out on YouTube at www.ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance, Bank of Baroda, and HDFC Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.
What is the workplace and how does your gender and body affect your right at work? Hey, I'm Priya Mirza, and on the Longest Constitution podcast, we critically examine the vision of the Indian Constitution and laws. In season 1, we looked at sex, gender, sexuality in India, and the landmark judgments which transformed our rights as citizens in this country. In season 2, we discussed the laws which shape the workplace and examine how ability, competence, and merit impact us, and much more. Join me, Priya Mirza, every Wednesday only on the IVM Podcast app, website, and all the major podcast streaming platforms.